Hello, this is Stas, and today I want to show you how to create this effect. Usually the people call it God rays. It can be applied to 3D geometry, it could be more pronounced, it could be applied to 2D geometry, and even to remarching. Here's a remarched object and here is a God rays. And the very nice thing about it is that it's very simple, and actually it's not some kind of real light calculation, because it would be computationally too heavy and too expensive, and this is just a trick that comes from photography, I believe, because in photography as you can see, God rays very popular in the clouds, in the forest, and so on. And in the, I suppose in the most of these photos, this is fake God rays, not a real one. And this created by using radial blur. So let's start from scratch. Let's make a new container. Okay. Let's create a two-dimensional God rays first. We could start with something very simple, like a circle, like something like this. And the circle should be much smaller, and let's move it a little bit. Okay, good enough. And the way to create a God rays is to use radial blur, but we don't have a radial blur here. We have only normal blur, which looks like this. If we make it much more, it looks like this. And maybe you're not familiar with, so the radial blur is radial blur. It looks like this. So as you can see, it's it's very common to use for emphasize some words like diabetes, cancer, heart attack, tuberculosis, logarithm. So yeah, probably for many people logarithm is almost as scary as cancer. So how to create a radial blur? Oh, by the way, if Google said that radial blur is used for disease, let's make this effect with disease. Let's start with lupus. Yeah, lupus is nice disease. I like it. Okay. The first idea for me was to use the feedback loop. It didn't work, but I show you because it helpful for understanding. So we can put a feedback. We could we need a blur. We need to, oh, oops, not here. Here. Then we need to scale it a little bit up. Scale it because it would be feedback is just some tiny scale. And if we want to move God rays somewhere, oops, and if we want to where is it? Ah, here is it. Okay. And if we want to move God rays somewhere in some directions, not everywhere, not uniform like here, but more like, I don't know, something like this one, so in some particular directions, then we need also to translate it also a little bit. So probably that's it. And the level, and the level, and we could use over, connect, feedback it. We need here put opacity something like this one probably, and it looks oops. It looks like God rays, yeah, from here. But if we start to move this scene, we can't. Is it moved? Oh, it's pixels. We need the fractions. If we start to move it, as you can see, it's not looks like light. It's more like some viscous fluid, because light should move spontaneously with the speed of light, obviously. And I believe this is because the feedback loop calculated 1 time per frame, so it's just 60 times per second. And we need to do it much faster. We need to do it like 100 times per frame. And the only way to do it is to use, maybe it's not the only way, but I think the only way to do it is to use GLSL. And I wrote GLSL code here. This one is my first version, and as you can see, it's very short and simple. But then I look into the palette and find that we have radial blur here. So let's use the radial blur from here. It's in image filters, radial blur, just put it here, connect, we need, and here these samples, it's samples per second. So okay, let's create some 3D scene, because it would be much easier to show you with the 3D. Okay, let's do it very quickly. We'd like to use, I don't know, box with some divisions, and let's take another box, which would be a much smaller box, and let's make a geometry, put camera, put light, and render, and we need phone map here, and we use this box as instance. So P1, P2, okay, maybe a little bit smaller, and it's look a bit boring, so let's add the rotations, noise, As a resolution we set float, and we need 64. We could do it like this, operator box 1. It would be much better to use null, but I don't care. Num points. Okay, and 1. And let's move it. Maybe not so fast. And let's add a math. We don't need monochrome. Let's add a math and range to 360. So it would be our rotations. Our rotations RGB. Maybe not even slower, like 0.5, and even smaller, like 0 or bigger, this one. And yeah, something like this. And let's add another null here and look at it and move camera backwards and move it somewhere over here. Okay, good enough for me. Let's put it into our what's going on? I don't know. Okay, so we want our God rays to move in this direction. Let's find out. I believe here center point is the center of texture, so it's 0.5, 0.5 is a center, and we need to move it this direction and this direction, and the strength would be a bit more, and maybe because it's not very bright, we could either add brightness here. Yeah, let's add brightness. No. Let's make it the right way. The right way would be to set to use only alpha channel. So I think it's reorder. Alpha. Okay, it's much better. Yeah, and maybe. Oh, if we set 200, we're just tweaking the values here to find something that looks good. Probably that's it. Okay, and let's say our cubes would be, I don't know, let's use violet color or purple color. Yeah, purple color, and we want purple or pink God rays. So let's add a constant. Let's use some pinkish color like this one and multiply it. Probably multiply would work. we want to use this as a fixed layer, we could add a level to tweak the amount. Next we could add a normal blur to make it maybe a little bit more foggy. And let's composite it with our rendered image. Let's use add. So here we go, we have our God rays, and again we need to tweak it a little bit, maybe we could, if you want, you could animate it, you could move the central point in the, for example, in the radial wave or somehow else. And yeah, if we move our geometry, the God rays moves with us. If we start to rotate it, let's start to rotate it. Abs time frame. Our God rays also rotating, and this effect, it's kind of very believable, even though it's just a 2D, but it looks like a real volumetric light, which would be much harder to do and much more computationally expensive. So that's it. That's how to create God rays. By the way, there is, if you want to make it a bit more interesting, I have more, I don't know, parameters in it. You can go into shader toy, and for example in this scene there is a nice tutorial about how to create a bit different kind of the same effect. I put link in the description, and I have tutorial about how to convert the shader toy shaders into TouchDesigner. And if you don't want to do it by yourself, you can support me in a Patreon, and I'll put this file, this already converted version, it's this one, somewhere in my Patreon. And the difference here is that it has the density, the decay rate. So if it's not very much different, but there is some tweaks, and it's also dithering, and it has implemented a light position, which is a fake. You could use like fake 3D light. You could say it coordinates of a light, and the shader converts this 3D light. It transforms the matrix and make a 2D direction from it. It's not super effective, but at least you have much more parameters to tweak and maybe have a different looking God rays. Yeah, and as I say, okay, maybe I'll show this one as well. So here as I have rectangle, the transform, it's very useful, has a tab called tile, which is useful to creating the tile of the same top. And if you add a noise and add a matte mask, you could create this looking like window that points into the, I don't know, some burning star or something like this. So it works very well with 2D images as well. And of course our good old ray marching. And by the way, I have 2 big tutorials about ray marching as well, so you could watch it and learn how to create such a nice geometry which would be impossible to make without ray marching. Or again, you could subscribe me in Patreon and get this file and look how it works. And thank you for all my Patreon supporters, and thank you for watching, and see you next time. Goodbye, have fun, God race.